Hello, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and members of the public. My name is Mike Schaefer. I'm the IT manager for the GIS division. And today I'd like to talk to you about the Oxnard 311 system and give you a performance update on how we've been doing in the first 4.5 years of service. The Oxnard 311 system was launched May 2nd of 2016. Since that time, we've processed over 70,000 requests, and the mobile application, has been downloaded by 8,130 different people. The Oxnard 311 system is a story of success. It streamlines access to services. People just use their mobile phone to report any number of problems they see, compared to jumping on the phone and trying to figure out who to call. They just immediately can submit their problem and have it sent to the right person. It increases transparency by allowing residents and anyone who's submitted a request to see real-time status updates about their request. They can ask questions through the in-app messaging, and they get to see expected completion times for their request type. It also increases accountability because for each of the request types, when it's assigned to a specific staff member, we actually get to see how they're performing individually, so we can address any kind of issues with underperforming staff and also congratulate staff that are doing a fantastic job. For this slide, we're going to talk about the app downloads per year. And for both this presentation and the staff report that you received, when we talk about a year, it's actually a service year of Oxnard 311. So that's from May through the end of April of the following year. So in year one, we had 2,139 downloads. The next year, we had 1,995, which was a slight decrease of 6.7% compared to the first year. In year three, we saw another jump up to 2,151 downloads, which was a 7.8% increase from year two. Year four, we actually saw the first decrease ever, which was a 30.9% decrease when compared to year three, and that was a total of 1,485 downloads. And in year five, in the first half, we've had 360 downloads, and if trends continue, we're looking at just under or around 700 downloads, which would be our lowest yet. Our next slide, I think, is the more interesting one because this is showing the number of requests submitted each year. And it's more interesting because this really translates into the amount of work that our staff are having to perform. So in year one, we saw 7,900 requests submitted, which is pretty surprising considering there wasn't a lot of outreach or media describing the 311 app and getting it out to a lot of people. So this was from a small user group, and they still got 7,900 requests submitted. Year two, we see a huge jump of 95%, up to 15,435. Year three, we see another increase of 14% to 17,704 requests. Year four, we saw a 6% increase to 18,784. And then year five, in the first half, we have 10,000. If trends continue and we break 20,000 requests by the end of year five, we'll see a 16% increase compared to year four. So that'll be the biggest yet. And part of my research last year, in both looking at the staff report and preparing this presentation, was to talk to different cities that use the same software and kind of see where their trends are going. You know, did they get this big jump between years one and two, and what was their average increase? And this was to help us kind of figure out if we're in the same trend as these other cities, and also what to expect in the future. And sure enough, I talked to a handful of cities, and they all reported that big jump between year one and year two. That's when word's getting out, people are getting more comfortable with using the app, and you see just this big jump in use. And then interestingly, the rest of the years saw about a 14 to 19% increase in requests per year. And we're just about in that range. We're year three, 14%, year five jumping up to 16%. So we're kind of following those trends. And I think that we can assume that as years go on, we'll continue to see these increases. So we'll have to prepare for that by either having additional staff added, or becoming more efficient in how we tackle these work requests. So we have 20 different request types. This year, we actually added a new one for homeless encampments. And each year, it's been the same top 4 request types. It's usually illegal dumping, graffiti, abandoned vehicles, and then in the past, it was potholes. But for the past 2 years, the 4th spot has been taken over by overgrown landscape. And in this slide, you can see the breakdown that last 4.5 years. Illegal dumping by far has the most request types, with 35% of all requests being submitted, or 24,614 requests. Next up is graffiti with 23% of all requests, or 16,623 requests. Abandoned vehicles after that at 11%, or 7,559 requests. And then overgrown landscape at 5%. So to avoid doing a 10-hour presentation, we're just going to do a deeper dive into the top 4 request types and look at their performance more specifically. So first up is illegal dumping, again with 24,614 requests. And the number of requests per year has basically mimicked that of the overall requests, that huge jump between years 1 and 2, a steady increase between years 2 and 3 and 3 and 4. And again, year 5, if we see the first half trends continue into the second half, we'll break the highest number yet and actually be over 7,000 requests for illegal dumping. And illegal dumping is basically any large items that have been dumped on the side of the road or in alleys. This often includes couches, refrigerators, cabinets, TVs, and sometimes requires specialized equipment to lift these heavy items. Next, we're going to look at the actual performance. So for each of the request types, we have a service level goal, which was a goal that staff came up with at the beginning of the system, saying, this is how many days we think it should take us to complete these requests. And when we talk about days, these are working days, and they do not include the weekend. So for illegal dumping, we had a goal of 3 working days to complete requests. On average, we've been at 5.2 days. And then this graphic that I've included shows the performance for each year. And then we've got the green line showing the goal. So in year 1, we're at a 4-day average, just over that 3-day goal that we're aiming for. Year 2, we had quite a slip to 8.6 days average completion time. Year 3, we did much better and actually got below our goal of 3 days, and we were performing at 2.7 days on average. And then years 4 and 5, we went back up above our goal at 5.5 days and 5.4 for years 4 and 5 respectively. And we'll talk more about that in the next slide. So at first, this can be a somewhat overwhelming slide, but what we're looking at is at the bottom, the 2 stacked bar charts are the total number of requests, and then behind that is the number of requests that were completed on time. And then that number is shown as a percentage as that green area in the background, showing that number that's completed on time. So for the first one, we have 426 total requests submitted in quarter 1 of year 1. 213 of those were done on time, which translates into 50% of requests being done on time. So if we look at these trends throughout time, each of the peaks and valleys kind of tells a story. And in the beginning, we see this throughout most of the requests. There's a little bit of a time where staff are getting used to the new system. We're having to reallocate resources to different divisions. We're moving people around to make sure we can respond to all these requests. And so you kind of see a rough beginning where you're getting about 50% of the requests completed on time. And then you can see in quarter 4 of year 1, we finally started to pick up and get to about 73% completed on time. And that was even with a large increase in the number of requests. But then in second quarter of year two, we see this nosedive down to about 18.9% being completed on time. And after talking to staff, you actually found out that one of the truck drivers who has a special license to drive one of these large trucks that can pick up heavy items had been injured and wasn't able to work. So without having that one truck being able to go around picking up these large items, the performance really fell. But then luckily we were able to get more staff, bring them in, and you can see the performance go up significantly. We really hit a stride starting in year three, quarter three, where we're completing 90% or close to 90% of all requests on time. And then unfortunately, at the end of year four and for part of the first half of year five, we see a performance drop again. And a big part of this, when you look at the numbers, is that the COVID-19 related stay-at-home order affected a lot of staff that would respond to these requests. So as they were forced to stay home, they weren't able to go out and process these, and a lot of the requests started to get backlogged and take down that overall average. I think before the stay-at-home order, staff were doing requests, I think, about 2.1 days, which is fantastic. And then during the stay-at-home order, that average jumped up to over 30, bringing down the overall average. So you can see that kind of COVID-related issue. And then luckily, we're starting to bounce back and finding ways to become more efficient. A really big part of how we're going to become more efficient moving forward is my team, the GIS team, has been working with various divisions to find ways to make their work more efficient. And that's by building a modern work order system that pulls in the requests from 311, maps them out in our GIS software, and then creates smart routing, which is going to take each driver to the different points they have based on the most efficient and most fuel efficient and time efficient route. And we're hoping that this really cuts down on the amount of time that it takes to get to each of these. Next, we have graffiti requests with 16,263 total requests. This is my personal favorite because I use the graffiti request type all the time. Every time I go for a walk, I mark everything I see, and the group just does fantastic work. I've told this story in the past where there's times where when I'm going on my lunch walk, I'll take a picture, and by the time I finish my loop and I'm coming back, the graffiti will already be gone. So the men and women that do this work are absolutely fantastic. So again, we're seeing the trends in the years kind of following the same as the overall request type increase. Year one to year two, a pretty large jump, and then just a significant or a steady increase in the remainder of the years. And again, for year five, in that first half, we're seeing a large increase, and if the trend continues, we'll see our largest year yet in graffiti request types. This is a great performance chart to look at. Again, the green line is our goal, and then each of the blue dots is our average for that year. So year one, we were at 1.7 days, well below the 3-day goal. Year two, 1.1 days. Year three, 1.8. Year four, 2-day average, still well below the 3-day goal. And then year five, 2.4. When we look at the performance graph for this one, it's really just a wonderful thing to see. All that green in the background showing very high percentage of completion on time from the very beginning all the way through our latest quarter. So again, just fantastic work done by the graffiti team. Next, we have abandoned vehicles. This is anytime you have a vehicle that looks like it's been left on the side of the road, maybe it's not in working condition. And it can also be vehicles that have been left on private property that look like they've just been left out in the yard and actually need attention from the code enforcement team. For the ones that are in public property on the streets, that's our traffic service assistants that do that work. So again, we're seeing a similar trend, big jump from year one to year two, and then a steady increase. For year five, if our first half trends continue, we will again see the biggest number of requests in year five total, with close to 3,000. Abandoned vehicles, again, looking at their goal of 14 days. On average, they've completed requests in 10 days. And each of the years, they've been well below our goal. Again, this is another great graph to see. We've got a lot of green in the back showing that high completion rate on time. We can see that little bit of a bumpy start that we talked about before with staff just getting used to the system and getting all the small details worked out, but then consistently staff have been performing in that 70 to 90% range. Next, we have our overgrown landscape requests with 3,589 total requests. This can be anything from a tree that looks like it's falling down. It can be, palm fronds hanging off a tree, or even some issues that are happening in our public medians. And this one also saw that same trend of a huge jump from year 1 to year 2, and then more of a steady increase, and actually a small decrease between years 3 and 4. But then year 5, if first half trends continue once again, we'll see our biggest numbers yet. The goals for this one are actually a great story, because we've got our 60-day goal. Average has been 61.1, so just over. But you can see that in those first 3 years, there was some struggle in getting to these and performing on time. We've got a 73.7 in year 1, 92.5 in year 2, and then 75.1 in year 3. But in year 4, things got really turned around. Additional staff were added to the team to respond to 311 requests, and they got it down below their goal significantly to 36.7 days. And that's continuing into the first half of year 5. We can see a little bit of peaks and valleys here with staff allocating resources, moving around. You can see we started off well with that 83% in the first quarter of year 1, but then I think as overall requests increased, it was hard to keep up with the requests and completing those on time. But luckily, starting about quarter 3 of year 3, we've seen a large increase in requests being completed on time, and it's held itself pretty steady. So overall, we have 9 request types that are meeting their goal in year 4. And then moving into year 5, we see an additional 5 request types that are meeting their goal. And that's for the first half of year 5. So that leaves us really with 6 request types that are kind of an area of concern. One, we have litter. Parks Management has recently shifted an additional staff person to the 311 team to assist in the backlogged requests. General questions request type, we have staff who will be working more on speeding up the process of reassigning the request to the right person. Potholes, staff are requesting additional personnel, funds to pave alleys that are in the worst conditions, and funds for a modern work order system. And these requests will be accompanied by an actual plan soon. Water, waste, and leaks. We have staff requesting either additional staff or a contract with contractors to properly address the ongoing workload. And these requests will also be accompanied by an actual plan soon. For illegal dumping, we're waiting on proposals from Public Works on how to tackle performance issues there. And similarly, for traffic signal issues, we're awaiting proposals from Public Works on how to fix performance issues there. That's the end of the presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.